Alright guys, my name is Metagoblin and today I'm going to be giving you a Mage PvE DPS guide for Classic WoW. It's important to note that this guide will be relevant for every single phase of Classic WoW's lifetime. In this video we will cover a number of sections: stat priority, pre-raid best in slot gear, enchants, consumables, talents, and lastly we'll finish off with a demonstration of the optimal DPS rotation. Just before I jump in guys, please do give me a quick follow on Twitch. I am near enough streaming on there every single day now. So let's talk about the stat priority. The stat priority is a little bit interesting for mages because the hit cap is a very difficult cap to actually reach. So the hit cap that you need is actually 16%, and obviously you get about 6% naturally from your talents, so then you need about 10% from your gear. However, it is pretty difficult to get 10% from your gear without sacrificing a lot of spell damage, right? Because spell damage, spell crit have also two other really great stats that you need to optimize your DPS, but if you're sacrificing them for the sake of hit rating, then fair enough, you'll be able to hit, you have a higher chance to hit the target, the boss or whatever, but you're probably going to be doing less damage. This means that people just kind of cope with a little less hit rating than the actual cap. Having 6% from your gear, I've heard, is basically just about good enough for you to cope, and a lot of mages are capable of doing really high DPS with that much hit rating. I mean, the issue is you might be choosing between a piece with hit chance and then another piece with crit chance and spell damage, right? And what I'd do is I'd recommend, having both pieces in your bags and just kind of equipping them separately and just testing the DPS. And coming up with your own conclusion of which piece of gear is actually better to have equipped on your character. But nonetheless, this is the stat priority, not regarding the hit cap. If you're in Frostspec, before Anchorage and Naxxramas, you want to be prioritizing spell damage, then crit, then intellect, and then obviously probably stamina and other stats like that. Then 5-spec, it's spell crit, then spell damage, and then intellect. So guys, similar to my hunter guide, I've made a big mage nuts and bolts list. So if you look down this Google Drive document, which will be in the description of this video, there is literally everything that you need to know, all the essential information, and basically a big shopping list for you to get going on with. As you can see, this is the pre-raid best in slot gear. Interestingly, the helmet gear is actually very RNG based because it's based on the fact that the piece of gears, some gear in the game has a chance to have a random enchant, and obviously sometimes there's a chance for it to have Frozen Wrath on it, which means it's going to do frost damage. So you'll probably be able to find that piece on the auction house. And as you can see, depending on what phase of the game that you're playing, I want this video to be useful for every single phase of the game. So depending on what phase you are playing, there might be slightly better enchants or slightly better gear, so be mindful of that when you're looking through the guide. And if you scroll further down, eventually, because obviously I've put enchants with the gear this time on this list. And if you scroll far enough down, you basically have your consumable list, flask, elixirs, food and weapon oils, the alcohol you can go for, potions, runes, and then some cheeky extras that you can find out on the open world, including their defensive list as well. And then obviously we have talents, which I'm going to talk about in the classic database talent calculator. So let's run into talents, okay? Moving forward in the guide, there's one thing I want you to understand about when it comes to playing a mage. Okay, when you're a mage, and you're amongst all the other mages in the raid group, you're essentially your own little mini raiding team, working very effectively together to optimize everyone's DPS, well, each other of the mages' DPS. This means that one mage in the group is going to take a hit to his personal DPS by going a different build, which is called the Winter's Chill build, in order to provide a really good debuff in the raid group to to increase everyone else's DPS. So anyway, let's run through the talent. So this is the standard maximum DPS talent build for optimizing your DPS, your personal DPS, okay? So most mages are going to go for this build. Ironically, you are actually spamming Frostbolt most of the time, but weirdly it is actually an arcane build. It is basically an arcane mage build with a little bit from the Frost build to optimize the DPS of spamming Frostbolt. And then one mage in the group, whoever it's going to be, it will be coordinated by your class leader. In Classic WoW there are class leaders as well as raid leaders, so you're basically like your own little community, and you need to kind of talk to each other about, what talent points you're putting here and there. But anyway, this is the Winter's Chill build. So the premise of this build is you've got Winter's Chill, which means on every single one of your Frostbolts, then you're going to be providing a little bit of a debuff to increase the DPS of every other mage in the group. Pretty straightforward. And then when basically these two builds are basically the best for taking down enemies with fire immunity, you know, Blackwing Lair, Elixir and Molten Core. When you start doing Zul'Gurub and Courage and Naxxramas, the last raid of Classic WoW, then you're going to want to go for this build, which is the optimal DPS build for Fire Spec. It's actually better than Frost build, otherwise, you know, we wouldn't even bother messing around with Fire Spec. Fire Spec does technically do more DPS than Frost build, but obviously you just can't use this build in some of the raids, so this is the optimal DPS build for Fire Spec. And let's now move on to the rotation section, where basically we need to continue delivering this kind of lesson about how, as a mage, well, as all the mages in the raid group are effectively working together in a strategic manner in order to optimize everyone's DPS. So let's run through the rotation for Frostmage. For the most part, it's very simple. A lot of the time you're just going to be spamming Frostbolt. What you do need to take mind of, though, is basically the Winter's Chill debuff. I'm on a Winter's Chill mage here with the debuff, so when I start using Frostbolts on the target, Winter's Chill starts stacking up. The best time to pop your cooldowns, to pop Arcane Power, is when, at round about now, when Winter's Chill is fully stacked on the target. That's when you want to be popping all your DPS stuff. So the Fire Spec rotation is much more complicated, and there's much more strategy involved when it comes to composing your DPS. And that's because it has to be coordinated with every single other mage in the group. Every other single mage has to change their rotation depending on what all the other mages are doing. And most of the time, your rotation has to be synced together. And it's all about, basically, let's talk about why this is. And it's very simple. There's a talent here called Ignite, and what it does, your critical strikes from fire damage spells cause the target to burn for an additional 40% of that spell's damage over 4 seconds. So this means if you use a Scorch and it crits, it's going to do 40% damage of 479 damage. But if you do it on a Pyroblast, it will do is it 40%? 40% of the damage over time over 4 seconds, but the 40% will be of 1,340. Which means that the best way to use Ignite is to use it with a Pyroblast. And the great thing about Ignite is it's basically slightly bugged in Classic WoW. Essentially, when one mage gets an Ignite on the target, and all the other mages basically use their own spells to get their own crits, what actually happens is it ends up refreshing the original Ignite. So the original Ignite that you used on a Pyroblast will, you know, it will keep getting duplicated, and this means that some mages will have basically an extremely high Ignite tick on the raid boss, and it gets to the point where it's doing so much damage that you actually have to cycle who has the Ignite proc, otherwise that mage would pull the aggro. So this means that the mage that you originally put the Ignite proc on the target will probably have to press escape twice or just stop casting, and then just sit there for a little bit, wait for his threat to drop down, let another mage get a new Ignite, and let him build up aggro, or, you know, to override the original mage's aggro. So, because obviously you don't want to pull aggro from the boss. So it's basically about coordinating that strategy together. Another important thing to notice is Scorch. It's going to be one mage's job, or maybe the collective effort of every single mage, to maintain the improved Scorch debuff on the target. As you can see there, it stacks up to 5, increases fire damage taken by 15%. It's very similar to the Winter's Chill effect. So let me talk you through a typical Fire Mage rotation. The important thing to understand about the Fire Mage rotation is that it has to be coordinated with every single other mage in the group. So nonetheless, let's begin. The first thing you want to do is get a really useful debuff on the target that I just mentioned, and that is improved Scorch. So what you're going to do is every single mage is probably going to, you probably can coordinate it together, but every single mage is basically going to cast improved Scorch, which puts fire vulnerability on the target, and because there's going to be 5 to 7 mages in the group, it basically means you only have to catch basically cast Scorch once for the maximum stacks of a debuff to be on the target. Then what you want to do, as you can see right there, I got an Ignite proc. We obviously do not want the Ignite proc to be on Scorch because that's basically the least damage that we can get from Ignite. So what you do after you've got improved Scorch fully stacked up, you kind of wait a little bit for the Ignite to go off, and then you're going to cast Combustion to increase the crit chance of your next 3 fire spells. And then every single mage in the group is going to collectively cast Pyroblast because you want to increase the chances of your Pyroblast critting. As you can see, it's not happening now, but because there's about 7 mages in the group, there's bound to be one mage that's going to get the Ignite proc. I just got it there. And then if you've got the Ignite proc after that, then every single mage is going to collectively cast Fireball after that crit there to basically maintain the Pyroblast Ignite. So it's very straightforward, more or less anyway. So let me recap it slightly. Everyone casts Scorch to get fire vulnerability on the target. You cast Combustion, and then everyone casts Pyroblast to get a really good Ignite tick on the target. And then after you've got your Ignites, then you collectively all start doing Fireball instead. Meanwhile, one mage will probably be casting a few Scorches to maintain the first Ignite, and also to obviously maintain fire vulnerability on the target. The issue, however, is that obviously that Ignite is going to stack up to ridiculous damage, so the mage who got the Ignite, you should be mindful of your DPS meter, because if your DPS meter is going crazy, it means that you've got the Ignite tick. And if you've got the Ignite tick, you also need to be mindful of your threat meter, and if you're climbing too high on the threat meter, that means you basically need to stop casting. Okay, you basically just need to stop casting, and during that phase when you're waiting for the Ignite to come off, when you need to totally reset the Ignite, then you can cast like a Frostbolt as a mini filler, because you don't want to be casting any fire spells, or you can do Arcane Missiles. To be honest, I'm not really sure which one is going to provide the most DPS to you. You can kind of have to experiment with that. So you wait for the Ignite tick to go off, then that mage is safe. That mage might have to stop casting for a little bit longer, but he should be okay. And then you basically rinse and repeat. You should already have the fire vulnerability up, and then you do your Combustion and Pyroblast combo again. Or you might not be able to use Combustion, you might all just have to spam cast Pyroblast, but you probably won't have to spam it because of Ignite. You've got 7 mages in the group, at least one of them's going to crit, and then you just kind of rinse and repeat the rotation from there. So hopefully that all makes sense. Anyway guys, that's where I'm going to end the video there. My name is Metagoblin, until my next video, ciao.